So as promised, you're getting ready to watch another video. It took a little bit of time to get this one together. Not that the video was very long, but I've just been busy outside of my content creation schedule. But I want to ask you all something before I get into a little bit about the details of today's episode. Have you all ever noticed, especially those of you who serve Jesus Christ or Satan, that the heathen always makes the assumption that just because you talk about the existence of Satan, or you always point out things that have happened in this world and situations that have occurred and imagery that can be found in other tools or secrets or whatever that points back to the existence of Satan, or you might talk about Jesus Christ, that the unbeliever always makes the wrong assumption that you're a man or a woman of God. And I won't give you all a straight answer because I just don't feel like giving you all one right now. And I'm sure some of you are already aware of where my service can be found. And you know the scripture, just judge a tree by its fruit, right? But I just wanted to, let you all know, like, it's kind of crazy that they would have that primary assumption about where's one's, what a person, beliefs are and what it is that they put into practice simply because you talk about a subject that is assumed for you to be a specific type of person. It's kind of wild. But today's episode, I'll be talking to you all about Albert Pike. Some of you, especially here in America, already know who Albert Pike was. He was actually a very intelligent man. He was also a Freemason. I will also be talking about Manly P. Hall as well as Albert G. Mackey, who are two other prominent figures in Freemasonry who have said some very interesting things in their book. And they wrote material regarding Freemasonry and what it entails and who it is that they serve and what it is that they believe and things of that nature. And I also will be talking about the Darwin family. And I'm sure many of you already know who Charles Darwin is. He was a smart man, yes, but there are other things you actually did not know about Darwin, or you may have heard these things already, and that's fine. But I'm sure you didn't know certain things about his grandfather and other members of his family. So you're getting ready to watch this video. Thank you all for subscribing to this channel. If you want to, you can like the video or you can dislike it. You're free to do whatever it is that you desire to do. But there's always consequences, right? Can't do everything, but enjoy the video. Albert Pike was a prominent 19th century American figure known for his roles as a lawyer, writer, poet, journalist, and soldier. He is most famous for his association with Freemasonry, a spiritual fraternal organization, and his influential work, quote, Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, published in 1871. Pike was born on December 29, 1809, in Boston, Massachusetts, to his parents Benjamin Pike, a shoemaker, and Sarah Andrews Pike. He was the eldest of 6 children. His family was not wealthy, but they made an effort to provide a good education for Albert. He attended local schools in Boston, where he developed a passion for reading and learning. This passion eventually led him to acquire proficiency in multiple languages, including Latin, Greek, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and German. His father, Benjamin Pike, who was a shoemaker, and Sarah Andrews Pike, his mother, she was a homemaker. As the eldest of 6 children, Albert grew up in a relatively modest household where his parents worked hard to make ends meet. Despite their financial constraints, Albert's parents were committed to providing their children with a good education. Albert attended local schools in Boston, where he showed a strong aptitude for learning. His passion for reading was evident from a young age, and he spent much of his time studying various subjects, including languages. His early education laid the foundation for his future proficiency in many different languages. In 1825, at the age of 15, Albert left Boston to work as a school teacher in Newburyport, Massachusetts. This experience helped him develop a strong work ethic and further reinforced his love for education. After a few years in Newburyport, Albert decided to seek new opportunities and moved westward, eventually settling in Arkansas in 1831. In Arkansas, Pike continued to work as a school teacher and also began to pursue other interests, such as journalism and law. He taught himself law and passed the Arkansas bar exam in 1834, despite having no formal legal education. This achievement marked the beginning of a successful legal career and demonstrated Pike's intellectual abilities and determination. In summary, Albert Pike's early life was characterized by a strong passion for learning, a commitment to education, and a determination to succeed despite limited financial resources. These qualities would continue to define him throughout his life as he pursued various careers and became a prominent figure in American history. After Albert Pike moved to Arkansas in 1831, his interests began diversifying, leading him to explore other careers. The first career choice was journalism. Pike pursued a career in journalism and became the owner and editor of the Arkansas Advocate, a Little Rock newspaper. He used the newspaper as a platform to express his views on various political and social issues. During his tenure as editor, the newspaper became an influential voice in Arkansas politics. The second one was law. Pike taught himself law and passed the Arkansas bar exam in 1834. He went on to have a successful legal career, representing clients in a wide range of cases. His legal expertise eventually led him to be appointed as the attorney for the Arkansas Supreme Court in the year 1836. Additionally, he played a significant role in revising the state's legal status in the 1836 to 1837. The third is Freemasonry. Pike's interest in Freemasonry began in the early 1840s. He was initiated into the Western Star Lodge No. 2 in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1850. His involvement with the fraternity grew over time, and he eventually became a leading figure within the organization. In 1859, he was appointed to the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction, a position he held until he died in year 1891. The fourth is poetry and literature. Throughout his life, Pike was an avid writer and poet. He published several collections of poetry, including the Hymns to the Gods in year 1830 and prose sketches and poems written in the Western Country in year 1834. His most famous literary work, Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, was published in 1871. The fifth was military service. During the American Civil War, Pike sided with the Confederacy and was commissioned as a brigadier general in 1861. He led a unit of Native American troops known as the Cherokee Mounted Rifles. Pike's military career was controversial, and he eventually resigned from his position in 1862 after disagreements with his superiors. The sixth was Native American advocacy. Pike was strongly interested in Native American culture and rights. He negotiated several treaties between the U.S. government and various Native American tribes during the 1830s and 40s. His legal expertise and understanding of Native American issues made him a valuable intermediary in these negotiations. When the Civil War broke out in year 1861, Pike was called up to be a brigadier general over a troop made up of several Native American tribes. He was cited as being an advocate for Native Americans and the wrongs they suffered at the hands of the white man. Regarding African Americans, however, Pike's view of slavery claimed it was a necessary evil. He claimed that slaves would not be able to hold any other job and that they were treated well by their masters. He even admitted to having his own slave for necessary work. In joining the Freemasons, Pike revealed his affinity for secret rites and rituals, which led to rumors of him joining the Ku Klux Klan. While there is no definitive evidence of Pike being part of the KKK, one scholar, John Gold Fletcher, believes that Pike wrote the Klan poem, quote, "The wolf is on the desert," end quote. As part of the Committee of the Citizens of Little Rock in Pulaski County in 1858, Pike joined 11 other men in signing a circular that encouraged the people of Arkansas to expel free blacks from the state. The circular stated, quote, "The evil was the existence among us of a class of free colored persons," and went on to explain why their very existence threatened the hold slave owners had on their slaves. Albert Pike's views on race and African Americans in the United States are complex and somewhat contradictory. As a prominent figure in the 19th century, his beliefs should be considered within the historical context in which he lived. Pike was a Southerner and had views that aligned with the pro-slavery sentiment prevalent in the region at the time. He was a proponent of the states' rights and succession, which contributed to the outbreak of the American Civil War. During the war, Pike served as a brigadier general in the Confederate Army, which fought to maintain the institution of slavery. This association with the Confederacy and its cause suggests that Pike held negative views of African Americans and supported the institution of slavery. However, some sources claim that Pike may have had a more nuanced perspective on race and slavery. Some historians argue that he was an abolitionist, though evidence for this claim is scarce and mainly based on anecdotal accounts. It is worth noting that Pike's views may have evolved over time, and it is possible that he held different opinions on race and slavery at different points in his life. In terms of specific actions against African Americans, it is challenging to pinpoint any direct actions taken by Pike. However, his support for the Confederacy and his pro-slavery cause indirectly contributed to the continued oppression of African Americans in the United States during the Civil War. Overall, the available evidence on Albert Pike's views on African Americans is limited and sometimes contradictory. It is essential to consider the historical context in which he lived and to recognize that his opinions may have been complex and subject to change. While it is clear that Pike was associated with the pro-slavery Confederacy, it is more challenging to determine his personal beliefs about African Americans and the extent to which he actively worked against them. I will now read you all an excerpt from the book, quote, Handbook of Freemasonry. This will come from chapter 23 of the book. This chapter discusses blacks and their involvement in Freemasonry. Here is the reading. The very title of this chapter, Freemasonry and Blacks, is somewhat paradoxical. Why should race be an issue at all, given the fact that Freemasonry has always claimed to be universal? Besides, it is not relevant in all historical and geographical contexts. Race was obviously an acute problem in the United States and in Caribbean countries, while in Europe itself, Freemasonry tended to be more tolerant, or at least remained more indifferent. The roots of the problem are to be found in Anderson's constitutions, although Mackey's landmarks certainly added fuel to the fire. As will be contended in the first part of this chapter, one of the reasons why race never was a formal problem for French Freemasons is that Anderson's constitutions did not cut much ice in France, notwithstanding efforts to popularize them by providing a rather loose translation from the English into French. The other reason is more political, as the French were strongly influenced by the Jacobin principles of equality and fraternity and never wholeheartedly indulged in communitarian approaches, refusing to consider ethnic groups and always preferring to acknowledge the human rights of individuals rather than the rights or absence of rights of communities. This does not mean that racism never existed in French lodges, of course. Before Haitian independence, the French lodges of planters in Saint-Domingue had found a compromise. They would accept black brethren, but only at the first and second degrees in order to allow them to attend to their white brethren as servants at meals. Toussaint L'Ouverture, however, whose Masonic affiliation now seems to have been proved by Jacques de Cavat, was to become active a little before the Haitian Revolution and to initiate a new tradition in Haitian Freemasonry. In the French West Indies, Martinique and Guadeloupe, the first lodges were obviously planters' lodges, but this was not regulated by any kind of text. This was just plain elitist practice. On mainland France, neither the Grand Orient de France nor the Grand Lodge de France ever brought forward any formal racist consideration, and black brethren have always been accepted as a matter of course, even if obviously numbers have been limited in practice. In Britain, black brethren have never been barred entry from lodges either, in spite of Anderson's constitutions. The ban was only enforced in the British colonies, in the American ones, and in the West Indies, as the Overton case proves. Black Freemasonry developed at a fast pace in French-speaking Africa, but this is too long and complex a story to be dealt with in this chapter, and it was not a specifically racial issue either. The scope of the present study has to be limited. Therefore, only Black Freemasonry in the United States and the British Caribbean will be considered, from the early lodges to the most recent ones, with a few case studies, not in an exhaustive manner, as this would be impossible, although general trends will be suggested. The original ban, the persons admitted members of a lodge must be good and true men, freeborn and of mature and discreet age, no bondman, no woman, no immoral or scandalous men, but of good report. Anderson's Constitution 1723, the charges of a Freemason, number 3 of lodges, the quotation from the 1723 edition of Anderson's Constitutions, had an enormous impact in the British colonies, whereas it passed virtually unnoticed in Britain. In France, it was largely ignored, but just as the whole text of Anderson's Constitutions, no more, no less. The same ban was reiterated in 1738. However, the British Masons paid no heed, probably considering oral tradition as much superior to written constitutions, be they Masonic, and accepting a few blacks now and then in their own lodges at home, contrary to what took place in their colonies. The British have always declined to provide themselves with a written constitution for their country, contrary to the French, for instance. The Freemasons in a way acted as true Britons, refusing to be tied up by written rules. However, in the British colonies, even more so in the United States, Americans felt the need to provide themselves with laws and constitutions. Similarly, the American Freemasons endowed themselves with several bylaws, rules, and regulations, and not content with abiding by Anderson's constitutions, bound themselves with more and more landmarks throughout the 19th century. The quote from Chapter 23 of the Handbook of Freemasonry highlights the complex history of race relations within the context of Freemasonry, particularly in the United States, the British Caribbean, and Europe. According to the quote, Freemasonry has always claimed to be universal, which would imply that race should not be an issue. However, race has played a significant role in the organization's history in certain regions, such as the United States and the Caribbean. The quote discusses Anderson's constitutions, which laid out the qualifications for Masonic membership and included restrictions based on race and social status. These restrictions had a significant impact on the development of Freemasonry in the British colonies in the United States, but were largely ignored or overlooked in Britain and France. In the British colonies in the United States, adherence to the rules laid out in Anderson's constitutions led to a history of exclusion and segregation within Freemasonry. The quote mentions a few examples, such as the Compromise and the French lodges of Saint-Domingue that allowed black brethren to join but restricted them to lower degrees, serving white brethren during meals. The quote also briefly touches upon the development of black Freemasonry in French-speaking Africa. However, the quote emphasizes that neither the Grand Orient de France nor the Grand Lodge de France ever formally implemented any racist considerations in their lodges, and black brethren was always accepted as members. In Britain, black brethren were not barred from lodges either, despite the restrictions laid out in Anderson's constitutions. The ban was enforced primarily in the British and American colonies and the West Indies. In summary, the quote from Chapter 23 of the Handbook of Freemasonry underscores the complexities of race relations within Freemasonry across different historical and geographical contexts. While Freemasonry has claimed to be universal, race has been a significant issue in certain regions, particularly the United States and the British Caribbean. The quote also highlights the role of Anderson's constitutions in shaping these race relations and the varying levels of adherence to these rules across different regions. I'm fully aware that idiots of mankind desire for Satan to be a positive stepfather that upholds and succeeds in doing what the original self-proclaimed father, that being his enemy, God, failed to do concerning the affairs of both governing the world and helping mankind. What's even worse is that now I have to clean up the trash that fools have left behind regarding demonic spirits and hell as a whole. Disgusting. As smart and successful as some of these men were, they were ignorant of the truth about Lucifer. I'd also like to add that I hate saying that name. That name was given to him by God, so it is a constant reminder to both him, demons, and servants of Satan of who it is the dark kingdom is up against. That is why I prefer to only use the name Satan. Those two names do not differentiate two separate beings, sheep. It's the same being. I'm aware of my strong, harsh tone, and I want you all to know I will not be changing it. Not sorry about it. Albert Pike and the rest of the now deceased Freemasonry members at that time wrote a lot of information about Satan and how much they revere him. They talk about him as if he is a god. Technically, they had it half right. He is the god of this world. Satan still needs to eradicate his opponent before he is truly able to rise and enter into an unchallenged and eternal position within godhood. Albert Pike wrote the book Morals and Dogma. This book was written for the Supreme Council and 33rd degree members of Freemasonry in the southern jurisdiction within the United States of America. In this book, he was able to abstain from making a common error most of you all make. He rightfully referred to Satan, also known as Lucifer, as being the son of the morning star. Remember, people, the morning star is the one you all hate, Jesus Christ. He says that mankind needs to not doubt that it is indeed Lucifer who bears the light. I mockingly laughed when I read this. Then you have the author of both volumes 1 and 2 of the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. The author of these two pieces of material was none other than medical doctor and 33rd degree Freemason Albert G. Mackey. In his writings, he explains the Masonic meaning of the pentagram depending on its position. Now, pay close attention, people, as I will not be explaining this in my comment section. Look very closely at how Albert Mackey, when describing the pentagram, always puts a positive meaning to the pentagram primarily, before then adding a negative meaning secondarily. Here is the order. It goes good or evil, order or disorder, initiation or profanation, Lucifer or Vesper, the morning or evening star, Mary or Lilith, victory or death, light or darkness. Now you notice how all the positive aspects come first. Thereby, it is safe to say that Lucifer can be associated, according to Freemasons, as being one who brings victory, light, order, goodness, initiation, and is seen in the same light as Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. You all also notice how the demoness Queen Lilith is associated with all negative aspects. Yet, you had idiots trying to tell me that Lilith was a positive, women-empowering role model. Trying to tell me that Lilith is the mother of all. Foolishness. Even the Freemasons agree with the rude demonologist who was giving you all this material that Lilith isn't a positive figure. She's a demonic spirit, for crying out loud. Not a damn recently divorced wife now turned far left anti-patriarchy feminist. Finally, we have Manly P. Hall, who can also be seen doing the vow of silence gesture in this photo. He is the author of the book, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. This is what he says in this book. He clearly says that when they learn and come to specific discovery and realization in their craft, they will become empowered by the seething, surging energies of Lucifer, of Satan. What Manly P. Hall says in this book is true, as Freemasonry is not only worldwide, but has many powerful members within the practice. Many of them reach the top of all hierarchies in every arena and subject here on earth. Lucifer empowers them, not the placebo effect, not anything related to universalism, Gaia, Father Time, or even paganism. In the book related to Freemasonry called Duncan's Ritual of Freemasonry, candidates are required to repeat an oath before initiated. I do not care if this is solely something of the past. Whether or not it is still required for them to repeat these words doesn't matter to me, but look at what they have to say. Quote, further, that I will not aid nor be present at the initiation, passing, or raising of a woman, an old man in his dotage, a young man in his nonage, an atheist, a madman, or a fool, knowing them to be such. Some of you have believed the silly lie that Freemasons are atheists. Fools, they are not. As a matter of fact, interpretation easily implies that they believe being an atheist is the equivalent of being a madman and a fool. I've personally heard a lot of creative, expressive things pour out of the mouths of atheists all my life. I can never be too proud or too ignorant to be one of those, or to act like that. What I can say though is that Freemasons, whether they'll admit to this publicly or not, do not share the same theological view as atheists. These two groups are not allies in the slightest way. Truthfully, there aren't many allies between religious and spiritual groups themselves, so how could atheists and Freemasons ever come to an agreement concerning the validity of a higher power? Use your brain, people. Do you know who else fooled many here on Earth? Charles Darwin. Yes, I'm aware of what he taught about evolution and how mankind finds that to be more factual and believable rather than a supernatural being no one can hear or see being the sole reason why everything exists. You see, Charles Darwin was in fact a Freemason. Not only he, but his grandfather, whose name is Erasmus Darwin, was a Freemason, a poet, and a renowned physician that was so exceptional at his job that he was offered the job as the court physician for King George III. He declined that offer. In 1788, he became a Mason at Canongate Kilwinning Lodge No. 2 in Scotland. His activity in the lodge is not fully known. However, he founded the Derby Philosophical Society in 1788. And here at the Breadsaw Priory, he wrote those wonderful books in which he shadowed forth ideas, the full development of which by his grandson, the late Charles Darwin, forms an epic in biological science. Freemasonry continued in his family as well. His son, Sir Francis Sacheverell Darwin, joined Freemasonry in the year 1807 or 1808, and his later descendant, Brother Reginald Darwin, joined the lodge in the year 1840. Sir Francis Sacheverell Darwin, who was the half-uncle of Charles Darwin, was also a Freemason and took after his father by becoming a physician as well. He was also popular among the royal court of England and eventually became a knight, being knighted by King George IV. He is not to be confused with Charles Darwin's third son, whose name is also Sir Francis Darwin. That man was born in the year 1848. Sir Francis Sacheverell Darwin was born on June 17, 1786. This information wasn't so easy to find, folks. But truthfully, it isn't like Charles Darwin was trying to hide what he was a member of all along. I mean, take a look at these photos. He demonstrates both the vow of secrecy and the hidden hand. Most of mankind is nothing more than pure sheep being led to the slaughter. Most of mankind isn't actually hard to deceive and trick at all. Many of you have made Charles Darwin the father of atheism and rationalism, and the whole entire time his real beliefs and practices were found elsewhere. Fools. You see, people, this is why I've dedicated this channel to proving the existence of Satan. My reason is only known between myself and the kingdom of darkness, and other than that, very few of mankind know the reason why. Discernment is fine, but discernment doesn't tell you everything, and you don't need to know everything about everybody anyways. Just like how you all didn't know some of this information about the Darwin family, many of you still don't know about Satan and his kingdom. Do not misinterpret my reasons as to why I teach the doctrine I teach. I am not doing this to be kind. I'm just following instructions. But please, for the love of whoever you do or don't believe in, serve, and put your trust and faith in, avoid acting like this weird piece of dung I found in my comment sections. Bye. Just saying I'm the man. Facts, bro. Lot of haters. Tell me where they